Hi, welcome to Zoe and Friends. Today we're going to be reading Matilda. Illustrated by Roald Dahl, illustrated by Quentin Blake. Matilda is a genius, a genuine
Prodigy.
Yes, prodigy. But her idiot parents think she's a dot. The sweet, sensitive girl is a scapegoat for everything that's wrong in their terrible lives. Matilda's happiest moments are spent reading books, and she's excited to be started school. That's before she meets the Trunchbull, the kid-hating bullying headmistress who terrorizes pupils and teachers alike. But when the Trunchbull goes after gentle Miss Honey, the one teacher who loves Matilda and believes in her, Matilda discovers her own remarkable superhuman powers to fight back. This book, 20th anniversary gift edition of Matilda, celebrates Roald Dahl's beloved tale of a downtrodden child battling other cruel and insensitive of other adults. Happy Be a Millionaire Day! I don't know if you can see it, but I hope you can see it. Okay. The paper almost flew away. Okay. National Be a Millionaire Day. On May 20th, each celebrates the idea of being a millionaire. Very few of us haven't imagined of what it would be like to be a millionaire. If you happen to be one of the few, this is the holiday for you. And also for those who like to imagine spending millions. And it's also World Bee Day. I don't know if you can see the bee, but that's a bee. Yeah. Bees and other pollinators, such as butterflies, bats, and hummingbirds, are increasingly under threats from human activities. Pollination, however, is phenomenal processed for hours, several eternities. Nearly 90% of the world's wild flower plant species depend entirely, or at least in part, the world's food crops and 35% of global actual land. Not only pollinators and ducks directly to food security, but they are key to conservatory, purgatory, or whatever the word is. Okay. Like I said, welcome to Zoe and Friends. And today we're reading Matilda. Yay! Now I'm going to start reading Matilda. Chapter 1, The Reader of Books. It's a funny thing about mothers and fathers. Even when it's their own child is more disgusting and little blister you could ever imagine, they still think that he or she is wonderful. Some parents go further. They become so blinded by adoration, they imagine to convince themselves their child has qualities of genius. Well, there's nothing very wrong with all this. It's the way of the world. It is only when the parents tell us about our brilliance of their own revolting offspring. That's when they shouting, "Bring us basin, we're going to be sick." School teachers suffer a good deal of having to listen to this sort of twaddle from proud parents. But they usually get their own back when the time comes to write. To write up some real scorchers of the children of doting parents. Your son Maxine, I would write, is a total washout. I hope your family business can push him into a job when he leaves school, because he won't get any job anywhere else. Or by feeling literal that day, I might write, it is a curious truth that grasshoppers have hearing organs at the side of their abdomen. Your daughter Vanessa, judging by what she learned by term, hearing organs at all. I might even delve deeper into natural history and say the principal Seneca 6 years as grab underground, and no more than 6 days as free creature of sunlight and air. Your son Wilford has spent 6 years as grub in school, and we're still waiting for him to emerge from chrysalis. A practical poisonous little girl might sting me into saying fauna has the same guttural beauty as an iceberg. Unlike the iceberg, she has absolutely nothing below the surface. I think I might enjoy writing end-of-term reports for the stinkers in my class. But enough of that. We have to go on. Occasionally, one comes across parents who takes opposite line, who shows no interest at all in their children. These, of course, are far worse than dotting ones. Mr. and Miss Wormwood were two such parents. They had a son called Mitchell and a daughter named Matilda. And the parents looked upon Matilda in a particular way. Particular as nothing more than a scab. A scab is something that you put up with until the time when it comes you can pick it and flick it away. Mr. and Miss Wormwood look forward enormously to the time when they can pick their little daughter off and flick her away. Perfectly, little daughter of the flick her away perfectly into the next country, or even further than that. It is bad enough when parents treat ordinary children as though they were scabs and retinos. But it becomes somehow a lot worse when a child is questioned in extraordinary. And by that, when I sense it and brilliant, Matilda is both of these things. But above all, that she was brilliant. Her mind was so nimble that she would quick to learn her ability. She would have been obvious, even to most half-witted of parents. But Mr. and Miss Wormwood were both so grumless and so wrapped up in their own silly lives that they failed to notice anything unusual about their daughter. To tell the truth, I doubt they would have noticed she crawled into the house with a broken leg. Matilda's brother, Mitchell, was perfectly a normal boy. But the sister, as I said, was something to make your eyes pop. By the age of 1.5, her speech was perfect, and she knew so many words as most grown-ups. The parents, instead of applauding her, they called her a noisy chatterbox and told her sharply that small girls should have never been heard. By the time she was 3, Matilda taught herself to read by studying newspapers and magazines. that laying around the house. By age 4, she could read so fast naturally by hankering after books. The only book in the whole athletic household was something called Easy Cooking, belonging to her mother. And when she had read this from cover to cover and had learned all the recipes by heart, she decided to want something more interesting. "Daddy," she said, "do you think you can buy me a book?" "A book," he said. "What do you think a flaming book for?" "To read, Daddy." "What's wrong with the television, for heaven's sake? We've got a lovely telly with 12-inch screen, and now you're coming asking me for a book? You're getting spoiled, my girl." Nearly every weekend afternoon, Matilda was left alone in her house. Her brother, 5 years older than her, went to school. Her father went to work, and her mother went out playing bingo in town 8 miles away. Miss Wormwood was hooked up on a bingo and played it 5 afternoons a week. On the afternoon of the day when her father had refused to buy her a book, Matilda set out all by herself to walk to the public library in a village. When she arrived, she introduced herself to the librarian, Miss Phillips. She asked if she might sit a while and read a book. Miss Phillips, slightly taken aback by a viral of such a tiny girl, not with her parents, nevertheless told her she was very welcome. "Where are the children's books, please?" Matilda asked. "They're over there on those lower shelves," Miss Phillips told her. "What, would you like me to help you find a nice one with lots of pictures in it?" "No, thank you," Matilda said. "I can manage." From then on, every afternoon, as soon as her mother had left for bingo, Matilda would toddle around in the library to walk only 10 minutes and allow her to glorious hours sitting quietly by herself in a cozy corner, looking at one book after another. When she had read every single children's book in the place, she started wandering around in search of something else. Miss Phillips, who had been watching her amazement for the past few weeks, now got up from her desk and went over to her. "Can I help you, Matilda?" she asked. "I'm wondering what to read next," Matilda said. "I finished all the children's books." "You mean you looked at all the pictures?" "Yes, but I also read the books as well." Miss Phillips looked down at Matilda from her great height, and Matilda looked right back at her. I thought some were very poor," said Matilda, "but others were lovely. I liked the secret garden best of all. It was full of mystery. The mystery of the room behind the closed door, and the mystery of the garden behind the big wall." Miss Phillips was stunned. "Exactly how old are you?" 4 years and 3 months, Matilda said. Miss Phillips was more stunned than ever, but she had the sense to not show it. What sort of book would you like to read?" she asked. Matilda said, I would like a really good one that grown-ups read, a famous one." "I don't know any names." Miss Phillips looked around the shelves, taking her time. She didn't quite know what to bring out. How, she asked herself, does one chose a famous grown-up book for a 4-year-old girl? Her first thought was to pick out a young teenager's romance that was kind of written for 15-year-old schoolgirls. But for some reason, she found herself exactly walking past a particular shelf. "Try this," she said at last. "It's a very famous one. And it's very good. If it's too long for you, just let me know and I'll find something shorter and a bit easier." "Great Adaptations," Matilda read, "by Charles Dickens. I'd love to try it." "I must be mad," Miss Phillips told herself. But to Matilda she said, "Of course you may try it." Over the next few afternoons, Miss Phillips could hardly take her eyes off the small girl sitting for hour after hour in a big armchair at the far end of the room with a book on her lap. It was necessary to rest on her lap because it was too heavy for her to hold up, which meant she had to sit leaning forward in order to read. And a strange sight it was. Tiny dark-haired person sitting there with her feet nowhere near touching the ground, totally absorbed in the wonderful adventures of Pip and Miss Habshan and her cobweb house. By the spell of magic that Dickens, the great storyteller, have woven in his words. The only movement from the reader was lifting a hand and now and then turned a page. And Miss Phillips always felt sad when the time came for her to cross the floor and said, "It's 10 to 5, Matilda." During the first weeks of Matilda's visit, Miss Phillips said to her, "Does your mother walk you down here every morning to take you home?" "My mother goes to a town every afternoon and plays bingo," Matilda said. "She doesn't know that I come here." "But that's surely not right," Miss Phillips said. "I think you better ask her."
"I'd rather not. She doesn't encourage reading books, nor does my father."
"But what do you expect you to do every afternoon in an empty house?"
"Just mooch around and watch the telly."
"I see."
"She doesn't care what I do," Matilda said with a little sadly.
Miss Phillips was concerned about the child's safety on the walk through a fairly busy village high street and crossing the road, but she decided not to interfere. Within a week, Matilda had finished Great Expansions, with an edition containing 411 pages.
"I love it,"
she said to Miss Phillips.
"Has Mr. Dickens read any others?"
"A great number," said the amazed Miss Phillips. Shall I choose you another?" Over the next 6 months, under Miss Phillips' watchful eye and clever eye, Matilda read the following books: Nicholas Nickleby by Charles Dickens, Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, Jan Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, Hyde by the Pruneau by Jane Austen, Tess by the Der Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy, Gone to the Earth by Mary Webb, Rim by Carmen Kipling's, The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, The Old Man by the Sea, Ernest Hemingway, The Sound of the Fury of the Fury by William Faulkner, and The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, The Good Compassions by J.B. Presley, Brighton Rock by Gain Green, Animal Farm by George Orwell. It was formidable list by now that Miss Phillips was filled with wonder and excitement, but it probably was a good thing that she did not allow herself to completely carried away by it. Almost anyone else witnessing the achievements of the small girl would have been tempted to make a great fuss and shot the news all over the village and beyond. But not so Miss Phillips. She was someone who minded her own business and had long since discovered with a smelling worthwhile to interfere with other people's children's. Mr. Hemingway says a lot of things I don't understand, Matilda said to her, especially about men and women. But I loved it all the same. The way he tells it, I feel I am right there in the spot watching it all happen. A fine writer will always make you feel that, Miss Phillips said. And don't worry about the bits you can't understand. Sit back and allow the words to wash around you like music. I will. Did you know, Miss Phillips said, that the public libraries like to allow you to borrow books and take them home? I didn't know that, Matilda said. Could I do it? Of course, Miss Phillips said. When you have chosen the book you want, bring it to me so I can take a note of it, and it's yours for 2 weeks. You can take it more than one if you wish. From then on, Matilda would visit the library only once a week in order to take out new books and return the old ones. Her own small bedroom now became her reading room, and there she would sit and read the most afternoons, often with a mug of hot chocolate beside her. She was not quite tall enough to reach things around the kitchen, but she kept a small box in the outhouse, which she brought in and stood on it in order to take whatever she wanted. Mostly it was hot chocolate she made, warming the milk in a saucepan on the stove before mixing it. Occasionally, she made broccoli or Ovaltine. It was pleasant to take a hot drink up to her room and have it beside her as she sat there silent room reading in an empty house in the afternoons. The books were transported into worlds and introduced her to amazing people who lived exciting lives. She went on olden day sailing ships with Joseph Conrad. She went to Africa with Ernest Hemingway, and to India with Roald Dahl. She traveled all over the world while sitting in a little room in an English village. The great car dealer. Matilda's parents owned quite a nice house with 3 bedrooms upstairs, while on the ground floor there was a dining room and a living room and a kitchen. Her father was a dealer in second-hand cars, and it seemed he did pretty well at it. Sawdust, he would say proudly, is one of the great secrets of my success. And it costs me nothing. I get it free from sawmill. What do you use it for? Matilda asked him. Ha! The father said. Wouldn't you like to know? I don't see how sawdust can help you sell second-hand cars, Daddy. That's because you're an ignorant little twit, the father said. His speech was never very polite, but Matilda was used to it. She also knew that he liked to bust, and she would egg him unshamefully. You would be very clever to find a use for something that costs nothing, she said. I wish I could do it. You couldn't, the father said. You're too stupid. But I don't mind telling young Mike here about seeing he'll be joining me in the business one day, annoying Matilda. He turned to his son and said, I'm always glad to buy a car when some dumb person has been crashing the gears so badly they're all worn out and rattle like mad. I get it cheap. Then all I do is mix a lot of sawdust with the oil and the gearbox, and it runs sweet as a nut. How long will it run like that before it starts rattling again? Long enough for the buyer to get a good distance away, the father said, grinning. About 100 miles. That's dishonest, Daddy, Matilda said. It's cheating. No one ever got rich. No one ever got rich being honest, the father said. Customers are there too diddled. Mr. Wormwood was a small, ratty-looking man whose front teeth stuck out beneath the thin, ratty mustache. He liked to wear a jacket and a large, brightly colored checks that sported ties, usually yellow or pale green. Now, take mileage for instance, he went on. Anyone who's buying a second-hand car, the first thing he wants to know how miles going is done, right? Right, the son said. So, I buy an old dump that got about 150,000 miles on the clock. I get it cheap, but no one's going to buy it with mileage like that, are they? And these days, you can't just speed monitor out to fiddle the numbers back like you used to in 10 years ago. They fixed it so impossible to temper with it unless you are a ruddy watchmaker or something. So what do? I use my brains, laddie. That's what I do. How? Young Mitchell asked. Fascinated. He seemed have inherited of his father's love of cookery.
lost my spot. Okay, now I'm back. I found my spot.
I sit down and say to myself, how can I uncover a mile age reading by 150,000, only 10,000 without taking speed monitor to pieces? Well, if I run the car, only 10,000 without features pieces. Well, if I run the car backwards for long enough, then obviously that will do it. The numbers will click backwards, wouldn't they? That would drive flaming car reverse for thousands and thousands of miles.
Okay, now I'm warm. It's windy today.
I feel like you could have told by you hearing the wind, but of course you couldn't, young Mitchell said. So I scratched my head, the father said. I use my brains. When you begin in a fine brain like I have, you've got to use it. And all of a sudden, the answer hits me. I tell you, I feel exactly like one of the brilliant fellow must have felt when he discovered pelican. Eureka! I cried. I've got it.
What do you?
Dad, the son asked him. The speed meter, Mr. Wormwood said, is run off a cable that is coupled up in one of the front wheels. So, if I disconnect the cable where it joins from the front wheels, next I use the high-speed electric drills and I couple it to enter such a way that it turns. Then I cable backwards. You got me, Father? You're following me?
Yes, Daddy, young Mitchell said.
These drills run at one in thermal speed, the father said. So, when I switch on the drill and mileage, the numbers will speedo spin backwards at a fantastic rate. I can knock 50,000 miles off the clock in a few minutes with my high-speed electric drill. And by the time I finish, the car's only done 10,000, and I've ready for sale. She's almost new, I say to the customer. She's hardly done than 10,000. Belonged to an old lady who used it once a week for shopping. Can you
really turn the mileage back with an electric drill?
I'm telling you trade secrets, the father said. So you don't go talking about this to anyone else. You don't want me to put in chug, do you?
I won't tell a soul, the boy said. Do you do this to many cars, Daddy?
Every single car that comes through my hands gets the treatment, the father said. I'm all warm and cozy. Every single car that comes through my hands gets the treatment, the father said. They have the mileage cut under 10,000 before they offer the sale. And to think I've invented that all by myself, he added proudly. It's made me a mint. Matilda has been listening closely, said,
But, Daddy, that's even more dishonest than the sawdust. It's disgusting. You're cheating people who trust you.
If you don't like it, then don't eat the food in this house, the father said. I bought it with the profits.
It's dirty money, Matilda said. I hate it.
The 2 red spots appear on the father's cheeks. Who the heck do you think you are? He shouted. The Archbishop Canterbury or something? Preaching me about honesty? You're ignorant little squirt. Who hasn't have the froggiest idea what you're talking about? Quite right, Harry, the mother said. There's a bug! No, that's a bee. I'm scared of bees. You've got a nerve talking to your father like that. Now keep your nasty mouth shut so we can watch this program in peace. They were in the living room, eating their suppers on their knees in front of the telly. The suppers were TV dinners in floppy containers with separate compares with stewed meat, boiled potatoes, and peas. Miss Wormwood sat munching her meal with her eyes glued to American soap opera on the screen. She was a large woman whose hair was dyed platinum blonde, except when you could see the moisty brown bits going from the roots. She wore heavy makeup that she had for the bogan figures, where the flesh appears to just strapped it around the body to prevent it from falling out.
Mommy, Matilda said, would you mind if I ate my supper in the dining room so I could read my book?
The father glanced up sharply. I would mind, he yelled. He snapped. Supper is a family gathering, and no one leaves the table until it's over. But we're not
eating at a table.
Matilda said.
We never are. We're always eating out of our knees watching the telly.
What's wrong with watching the telly, may I ask? The father said. His voice had suddenly become soft and dangerous. Matilda didn't trust herself to answer him, so she kept quiet. The feel of anger boiling inside of her. She knew it was wrong to hate her parents like this, but she was finding it's very hard not to do so. All the reading she had done, giving her a view of life that they had never seen. If only they would read little Dickens or Kipling's, they would soon discover there's more to life than cheating people and watching television. Another thing, she insisted being told constantly that she was ignorant and stupid when she when she knew she wasn't. The anger inside her went boiling and boiling. And as she laid there in bed that night, she made a decision. She decided to make a small victory or two to help her tolerate their oddness and to stop her from going crazy. You must remember that she was still hardly 5 years old, and it was not easy for someone as small as that to score points against an all-powerful grown-up. Even so, she had had to go. Her father, after what just happened in front of the telly that evening, was first on her list. The hat superglue. The hat and the superglue. The following morning, just before the father let out for his beastly second-hand car garage, Matilda slipped into the cloakroom and got hold of the hat he wore each day to work. She had to stay on her toes to reach up as she got the hat off the peg. Even when she was just to make it, the hat itself was flat-topped of pork pie jobs with jay feathers stuck in the hat band that Miss Wormwood was proud of it. He thought that not getting up, that he thought it looks especially warm with an ankle, with his loud-cheeked jacket and a green tie. Matilda, holding the hat in one hand and a thin tub of superglue in the other, proceeded in the squeeze of line of glue that was very neatly all around the inside rim of the hat. And then she carefully hooked the hat back on the peg with applying of glue just as her father was getting up from the breakfast table. Mr. Wormwood didn't notice anything when he put the hat on, but when he arrived to the garage, he couldn't get it off. The superglue is very powerful stuff. So powerful, it will take your skin off if you pull it too hard. Mr. Wormwood didn't want to be scalped, so he had to keep the hat on his head all day long, even when he was putting sawdust in his gearboxes, finding the mileage of the cars with his electric drills. In an effort to save face, he adopted a casual attitude, hoping that his staff would think that he actually meant to keep on his hat all day just for the heck of it. Just for the heck of it. Like gangsters do in films. When he got home that evening, he still couldn't get the hat off. "Don't be silly," his wife said. "Come here, I'll take it off for you." She gave a sharp yank. Mr. Wormwood let out a yell and rattled into the window panes. "Ow!" He screamed. "Don't do that! Let go! You'll take half the skin off the forehead." Matilda, nesting in her usual chair, was watching this performance over the rim over a rim of the book with some interest.
"What's the matter, Daddy?" she said. Has your head suddenly swollen or something?"
The father glared at the daughter with deep suspicion, but said nothing. "How could it be?" Miss Wormwood said to him. It must be super glue. It couldn't be anything else. Anything else. That I'll teach you to go playing around with the nasty stuff like that. I expect you were trying to stick another feather in your hat."
"I haven't touched the flaming stuff,"
Mr. Wormwood shouted, and he turned and looked at Matilda, who looked back with him in large, innocent brown eyes. Miss Wormwood said to him, "You should read the label on the tub before you start messing with the dangerous products. Always follow the instructions on the label." "What in heaven's name are you talking about, you stupid witch?" Mr. Wormwood shouted, clutching the brim off his hat to stop anyone trying to pull it off again. "Do you think I'm stupid? I'd glued the thing to my head to put on purpose," Matilda said.
"There was a boy down the road who got super glue in his finger without knowing it. Then he put the finger in his nose."
Mr. Wormwood jumped. "What happened to him?" he shouted.
"The finger got stuck inside his nose," Matilda said. "And then he had to go like that for a week." He shouldn't. For a week. And people kept on saying to him, "Stop picking your nose," and he couldn't do anything about it. He looked like an awful fool.
"Served him right," Miss Wormwood said. "And he shouldn't have put his finger up in there in the first place. It is a nasty habit. If all children had super glue in their fingers, they soon stop doing it," Matilda said.
"Grown-ups do it too, Mommy. I saw you doing it yesterday in the kitchen."
That's quite enough from you," Miss Wormwood said, turning pink. Mr. Wormwood had to keep his hat on for supper in front of the television. "You just have to do without it, won't you?" his wife told him. Later on, and when he went up to his bed and got tired again, to get the thing off, so did the thing to his wife. But he couldn't budge. "How am I supposed to go and shower? He demanded. "You just have to do it without it, won't you?" his wife told him. And later on, she watched her skinny husband skulking around in the bedroom with his purple striped pajamas with pork pie hat on his head. And she thought how stupid he looked. Hardly the kind of man a wife dreams about, she told herself. Mr. Wormwood discovered the worst thing about having a permanent towel on his head is having to sleep in it. It was impossible to lie comfortably on the pillow. "Now stop fussing around," his wife said to him after he had been tossing and turning for about an hour. I expect it would be loose by the morning when then it slip off easily. But it won't slip off easily. So off. And it won't slip off. So Miss Wormwood took a pair of scissors and cut it off his head bit by bit, first by the top and then by the middle. Off right off the skin, and finished with a bald white string about his head. It looked like some sort of mohawk. And in the front there was a band that had struck directly in bare skin. There remained a whole lot of patches of brown leathery stuff that no amount of washing would get it off. At breakfast, Matilda said to him, "You must try to get those bits off your forehead, Daddy. It looks as though you've got little brown insects crawling all over you. People will think you have lice." "Be quiet," the father snapped. "Just keep your nasty mouth shut, will you?" And all that was most satisfactory exercise, but it was surely too much to hope that it would hardly taught the father a permanent lesson. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, you can just type it below, and I'll answer them later, and bye.